Hi, this is Demoulas, and this is my second weather briefing for Aviation Meteorology 231. So today we'll be looking at today's date, July 13th, and right now we just got the flight categories, and just going to be a overview on this slide right now, and it'll give you a general sense of what the weather is doing. Now, pretty scattered across, still again in the north, Midwest, and then northeast coast, as well as some things going on in the west coast. So we'll start on the east coast, and we got a lot of low IFR out there, some marginal as well, and just generally IFR. So we can expect to see some low clouds, maybe a little precipitation possibly if we get any convective activity as well. And we'll keep an eye out as you go through these different slides. Now, as we move up to the north Midwest up there, you can see a lot of IFR as well, a little marginal, mostly marginal, I'd say, around Minnesota, a little northern Minnesota, a lot of low clouds, and that continues east of Minnesota. And not too much happening on the west coast. It's going to be a lot of marginal with the low IFR. And as you go down the coast, it's going to continue marginal. This is going to be the satellite showing the cloud layer. And as we relate back to that first slide, we can expect to see some of those low clouds and movement on that east coast, on the north Midwest, and as well as a little bit scattered on the western coast. And this is going to be the radar showing any precipitation. So we can expect a little precipitation on the east, and a lot of this is going to be light, as that light green shows. Some of that yellow and just a little bit of the red will be some of that more heavy stuff, but not too much heavy across the United States today. A little bit light up in the northern east, up near Maine, a little bit of Massachusetts. Western coast, none at all on that east coast. As we saw, those clouds were really low, and even some low IFR conditions, but as it shows, there's no precipitation. Even as we take a look at Minnesota, a little bit northern Minnesota, it was showing low IFR as well, I believe, and there's no precipitation. And a little bit south of Minnesota, more in that Midwest, it was pretty much scattered, all marginal. And as we can see, there is a little bit of precipitation that's following right there. This is going to be a kind of a METAR here showing us all sorts of things, right? We have the wind speed, direction, dew point, temperature, where those cloud ceilings are going to be, as well as the type of sky cover is going to be represented by those dots. So we can take a peek here, as well as it's going to be showing those different obscurations, such as rain or anything else with those symbols on those around that sky cover. So we can start on the east coast, kind of have that cloud cover there showing, and pretty packed right near around Massachusetts and a little bit north of Massachusetts, as we saw, covering into the Midwest. And as we move to the west coast, going to be those low IFR clouds like we saw, a little bit near off of California mostly, and a little bit north towards Washington, that Seattle area up there. Not too much happening down south near northern Texas or those southern Midwest states, as well as the southeast region. All right, and this is going to be some PIREPs for icing, and not too much besides that kind of East Coast area, middle up on the East Coast area. Really high flight levels. These are things that were going to be reported. We also have a little that icing up there as you can see in that box, as well as the thunderstorms down near in the Gulf, a little off of Florida. All right, this is going to show the PIREP, it's going to be reporting turbulence, as well as showing those different symbols that are going to reference to whether it being, the different severities of turbulence. So, kind of in that Midwest, we have pretty good, some good turbulence right there at the way higher flight levels near Michigan, a little bit south of Michigan, and as well as we noticed the thunderstorms there down in the southeast off of Florida, as we got another report down there coming right off those thunderstorms, so that's probably why they were experiencing that. And this next slide is just going to show a little bit, the different charts on the different aviation weather services, that you can get different chunks of the country and you can split it up nicely. So this is going to be just a view there of the Midwest. See that that big chunk there in the Midwest, a little off of Minnesota. This is what we're seeing here essentially. You can just see about half of Minnesota. North Dakota's up there as well, as they're experiencing some, and then Michigan. All right, and this is going to be the the aviation forecast, or the next slide is going to be aviation forecast, but this is going to be showing essentially the winds aloft, as we can see the different directions as well as the speeds. So it's going to be pretty windy up there in northern Midwest. Not so much down by the East Coast, definitely southern East Coast, not too much. In the lower Midwest portion of the United States, and some pretty good winds out on the West Coast. All right, this is going to be the graphical description of the aviation forecast, showing a number of things like the wind speeds and whatnot, as well as some flight conditions as a marginal VFR or IFR, as you can see. One thing that is labeled is going to be that IFR and that purplish shade. This is, these are all useful tools that we can look at to see where, we might cross some weather conditions on a long flight somewhere, few hour cross country trip, if we're going to run into anything, or if we should to kind of fly around it and avoid it. This is going to be the text for the aviation, the forecast. So this is just a small chunk, but essentially it's going to be breaking up many different states, depending on what region you pick, and you can pick through every single one essentially on the website. But right now we just took, we'll go into Minnesota. Right now, as we see, it'll break it up into northwestern, northern half, and then it'll tell us, as we see now, the overcast 2,000 to 3,000, like we would have predicted, as we saw in the numbers last slides. And then we get the tops, which is going to be the tops of those things, going to be 7,000, and it goes into what it's going to look. It's becoming in the different amount give us a time range, give us that the ceiling there broken 3,000 to 4,000, as well as an outlook, which is going to be VFR. All right, and this is going to be pretty much almost another overview showing the different ranges of the flight categories, as well as this one will show the different terrain obscurations and flight, those shades, especially in the northern half there, the IFR conditions. So as we see those red flight category dots, placing those will just work from north Midwest. So those red ones can be IFR. So it's going to be showing in the shades those IFR areas and bring it into a little more detail if we were to try to avoid something, or if we were only flying VFR, how we would manage to get around some of those areas. And in the California side of things, we saw the flight categories in the first slide that it was pretty much just working all up along that coast. The low IFR as well as marginal, and even some a little bit low. So we can expect those IFR shades over there. And the rest of the country pretty well VFR. Alright, that was my weather briefing. Thanks.